Good evening, everyone. And what a joy it is to be with you this evening and to be able to share with you a wonderful, wonderful guest. I'll tell you all about Sister D in a moment, but I want to do an invocation just to bring us together in this unified field. And so I know right now that wherever we may be, we are here in this moment together, uniting in this wonderful consciousness and this divine vibration, this wonderful field of love, of spirit, of just a divine emanation. And so as we journey together on this frequency, I know that we become receptive to the gifts of this moment. So we go forth ready to receive. And so it is. Amen. All right. Well, I am really excited this evening to share with you my guest. We are one, and this is the fourth in a series of 5. And tonight we have Sister Nghiem, and Sister D, as she is affectionately known, is a monk out at the Deer Park Monastery here in Southern California on the Escondido area, a monastery that was founded by Tiknakon himself. And those of us that have been around a while remember hearing when he comes to visit the area, but it's been some time for sure. But Sister D was personally trained by Tiknakon over in Plum Village. This wonderful, just Zen Buddhist delivered to her such great wisdom and activated with her an amazing vibration. And so as you begin to listen, you can just feel her spirit, her essence, her countenance just jump off the screen. So Sister D, welcome. It's a joy. I know you're in the midst of a 3-month retreat, and that you are coming out tonight, being given this shared office to join us. I know it's a gift for you to have said yes, but I am very excited. You know, your smile, your wisdom. I mean, you're the author of 3 books. I'm very excited to hear more about your recent one that came out this year. But just welcome and tell us a bit of something. And I got some questions, and I want to invite our viewers to write in their questions into the chat room. But welcome to this moment together.
I'm glad to be here with you.
And so what I'd like to just start with is that we're in these dynamic times. There's a lot going on in the world, in our country. There's high levels of concern about health and well-being. There is concern about the different politics and the polarization going on in many of the different countries. And so your Buddhist practice and your mindfulness, what is it that you would share with your students who come to you and say, Sister D, I'm anxious. I don't know how things are going to unfold. What is some of the insights you might want to share?
Dear friends, I know you are there, even though I don't see your faces, but I know you are there, and I'm very happy and grateful you make this time so that we can share an experience together. To me, in times like this, the most important thing is that we remain calm, that we cultivate clarity and calmness in our daily life, so that we may remain anchored in the insight of interconnectedness, interdependence. In such a polarized world, we often see ourselves separate from the others. Whoever the others may be, it depends on the situation, on the topic. But to be able to see ourselves in each other, that's very important. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Yin-Yang sign. We have actually a bean. It's called the Yin-Yang Bean. And it has an oblong shape, and half of the bean is black and the other half is white. And on the white side, it has a black dot. And on the black side, it has a white dot. It's called an interbeing. And it's a great illustration of the teaching taught by the Buddha called interbeing. So to be or not to be, that is not the question, because we are are. It means that on the white side, there is the black dot. And on the black side, there is the white dot. In the white, there is the black. In the black, there is the white. In you, none of us exist independently. We're very much dependent upon each other, on the conditions of our family, of our society, of the world. And even though there are those that we never know their names and their faces, they are directly affected by us and vice versa. So when we remember that insight of interbeing, and we recognize that in our daily life, then we remain connected instead of disconnected from the world, from ourselves, from each other. And that insight of interbeing helps us to maintain our kindness, our generosity and compassion. And one who still has compassion and kindness is one who is happy. One who is grateful for what is one who can be happy. But one who forgets that interconnectedness, one who is not grateful for what one has, then that person, doesn't matter how much they have, they are miserable. They cannot be happy. They're very isolated and alone.
So if someone forgot, how does one remember? I mean, if you forgot about the interconnectedness and they are miserable, how do they return to happiness and calm and gratefulness?
Well, I give you a concrete example. I've been having some back pain the last 3 weeks.
I'm sorry.
And it can be very, very painful. So one afternoon, there was such deep pain. And I thought to myself, wow, I spent hours giving consultation. I help so many people day in, day out, in person, on Zoom. I cannot even recount them all. But in that very moment, I was in pain and there was nobody I could ask. My sisters were busy. I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to trouble anybody. Then suddenly I felt sorry for myself. I felt so alone and I felt disappointed. And so I kind of wallowed in that depressing thought for just a couple of minutes. And then suddenly I remembered, in the midst of the day, I can lie down in bed because I'm in pain. So there are sisters who are cooking right now in the kitchen. There are sisters who are cleaning. There are people who are working very hard in the mines, in many places, in the farms, in dangerous situations. And all of them work hard so that I may have the clothes I have on my body. I may have the nunnery to live in, to have the water running to me, to have the food ready when lunchtime arrives. You see, so when I remember all the people, known and unknown to me, working so hard so that I may have that time to rest, to take care of myself, my heart was filled with gratitude all over again. And then I didn't feel lonely. I didn't feel dejected. I didn't feel abandoned, but I felt very grateful. And with that gratitude, even though there was still pain, it was definitely more manageable. and I could just get a bottle of hot water and just put that on my back and lie down and breathe and send love and gratitude to my body for its capacity to endure pain and its capacity to heal. And so then I was just fine. So our awareness of our own thoughts and feelings, and to know that they are right views, right thinking, or that they are not right views and right thinking. And we can remind ourselves of the interconnection that we have with everybody around us and everybody in the world. In those moments, we heal our individualism, our separation.
That's beautiful. My goodness, that is a beautiful practice of right thinking. And so I'm just going to add to that, that I'm going to know with you that your generosity of giving tonight of yourself to the world, that you will awaken in the morning comfortable, your back will be well, and all the work that you've done will just come pouring back into your physical being with a sense of comfort and wellness. So
thank you, dear Reverend, for your well wishes.
Yes. And thank you for being here with us in the midst of that. I mean, you've got an amazing story. Born in Vietnam, a Vietnamese mother, an American soldier. And then your mom died at an early age. I think it was 14. And then you and your brother immigrated over to America. Could you tell me more about growing up in Vietnam during that dynamic time, learning, being inspired? And then when you came to America, you became a MD, you graduated from the University of San Francisco as Dr. Sister Dang. I guess you got the sister later, but please fill us in on your journey. I know we can read about it. What book would we read to find your story in there like that?
My first book is Healing Journey from Doctor to Nun. So it reflects my life as an Amerasian, a child born to an American GI during the Vietnam War. I forgot exactly how many Amerasian children were born during the Vietnam War, but definitely thousands, at least 50,000 plus. So my brother and I were born in such circumstance, and we actually never knew our father. Most of us did not know our father, and our mother did her best to raise us, and with the help of our grandmother. And then she actually disappeared in 1980. So I was only 12 years old then. And it was a very difficult time, turbulent. The communists just took over. There was a lot of chaos. So people went missing. Quite often, many people tried to escape Vietnam. And my mother might have done that, and she might have lost her life at sea. But it was unlikely because we were Amerasian children, and she already applied the paperwork because the United States government agreed to sponsor Amerasian children. So we didn't think our mother tried to escape by boat on her own. But anyway, she did. She disappeared, and grandmother continued to raise us. And when I was 16, almost 17 years old, then grandma agreed to allow us to come to the US because she felt I was old enough to take care of my brother, who was 4 years younger than me. He was 12 at the time. And grandmother sent me to the US with only 3 wishes. One was that I raise my brother to become a good person. That was very important to her, and also very important to me. The second wish grandmother had for me was that I obtain a higher education, which made sense to me. And I worked very hard. When I came to the US at the age of 17, I only know how to say, "How are you? I'm fine, thank you." So a funny story was that one day in school, a boy asked me, "What are you doing?" And being 17, um, I, I think the boy had a crush on me too. And so he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm fine, thank you." And then 5 minutes later, I realized, oh no. He meant, "What are you doing? Not how are you doing?" And I was so embarrassed for the rest of the day. Every time I saw him, my face just blushed.
Uh-huh.
I just blushed.
Yeah.
And so it was difficult. I had to learn English at such an older age. But thankfully, we had foster parents. We had very good uh, ESL teachers, English as a second language teachers. They were kind to me. They really helped me. So my heart goes out for those who emigrate to this country at an older age, who try to learn the language, who try to make it in this country, or those of us who have to leave our own country, even the US, to go to another place and try to learn another language. But I strived, remembering what grandma wanted for me, and I also wanted to do my best because I had a second chance in life. In Vietnam, I didn't feel that I had a place. My brother certainly didn't have a place because he looks very white. I look more Vietnamese, but my brother had very light skin, blonde hair, and looked like a white kid when he was growing up. So I worked hard and I actually went to college in Tucson, Arizona, U of A, University of Arizona, and I had a full scholarship going to U of A medical school, but I chose UCSF because I felt that the city was more diverse, very rich in culture in every way. So I went to UCSF without a scholarship given to me. And that was quite a risk-taking decision, but I'm glad I made it because in the end, they gave me enough scholarships for, the years that I was there. But I also learned so much about different cultures and just enrich my life. So that's how I became a doctor with a lot of help from my teachers in high school and also my professors in college and also in medical school.
Mm. What a great journey. And then you met
And so I fulfilled all 3 wishes from my grandmother.
Yes.
My grandmother was a sage. She had 3 wishes and I did them all.
What a good granddaughter you are. But then you met a guy, and didn't you get married?
No, I never married anybody, thankfully. Actually, I met 2 wonderful men in medical school. And the one who passed away was John.
Yes.
Yeah. I dated a neurologist. That was my first partner in medical school. He was very loving, very kind. But in the end, I saw that although I had everything I wished for, I thought that if I could have a good career, if I could find somebody who was loving, it would make up for all the losses, all the trauma that I had gone through life. But it was not so because here I was becoming a doctor. I had a great partner who was much more successful than I was. He was an attending physician when I was a medical student in medical school, I had everything going for me, and yet I would plunge into bouts of depression. I would have migraines all the time. And every time when I was depressed, I would push him away. He was actually very empathetic, very kind. But I would push him away. And in the end, I realized that I couldn't make him happy because I was so lost in my own trauma, in my own drama. And so I actually asked him that we would break up our relationship. But of course, when you live out there in the world, it's very difficult to be by yourself, to be alone. So I ended up having John as my next partner, who was incredibly spiritual and intelligent. He was an engineer for Adobe, so another very successful person, and another person who loved me very sincerely. But then again, towards after 2 years or so, I started to go back to my old pattern of not being able to be present for him, for the conditions of happiness in my life, especially when I was depressed and stressed out. And but by that time I was in residency, and residency can be very, very stressful and demanding. So and then suddenly John died in he went to Half Moon Bay, he swam, and the current pulled him out to sea. And he was a great swimmer also. But you know, natural forces are much more powerful than us. And that was heartbreaking for me. And it really woke me up that my delusion that if I became successful, if I had a wonderful relationship that would heal all my pain, it would compensate for all the losses in my life. I woke up to the reality that it wasn't so. If I didn't know how to cultivate peace in myself, if I didn't know how to care for myself, then it didn't matter what I had going on for me. I would turn my back on them and just identify myself with suffering. And I had that insight partly and thankfully also because I had attended a retreat led by our teacher, then Master Tiknakon, only 3 weeks before John died. And it woke me up to that suffering in me and also show me that there's the mindfulness practice that could help me to find true healing. And so when John died, I had two choices. One was just to forego my life because I was in deep despair. Oh, because I loved him, yes, but also because of all the trauma in my life became very alive all over again. And there was no more that delusion to keep me going on. So I just wanted to give up. But I thankfully because I saw the path, the practice, and I had hope in it. So I chose life because I thought if I were to die and if there were heaven, I would never see John again because he would go into a bright place. He lived his life in a very spiritual, peaceful, joyful way. But I would go into darkness. So we'll never meet again. And so I also didn't want to disappoint the many people that I cared for when I was in medical school in my life. My own brother, who had only me as his sister. So I chose life. And so I let go of medicine. I went to Plum Village in France, where our teacher resided. And so, yeah, 3 months after John died, I went to Plum Village. And then I stayed there for 5 months before I was ordained as a nun. And that was in May 2000. And that's been 21 years plus now that I've been a nun. Yes. And I have no regrets whatsoever.
What an amazing journey. What was it like to be with Tiknakon? He is just a luminary, a mystical giant in our culture, truly a leader by right of consciousness upon this planet. And to think that you were with him, what was that like? How did he teach? Tell me something. I quote him all the time. It'd been wonderful to been in his presence.
Our teacher is incredibly loving. He's very human. in the best sense of the human way.
Mhm.
I remember I ordained in 2000 and 2001. He went to the US for a retreat. And when I was at the airport with him before he left, he's pointed to the machine, where you put your luggage on and it does the security check.
Mhm.
And he pointed at the luggage going through the camera contraption, and he said to me, "My child, do you see? It goes in this way and then it goes out that way. Life and death are like that too."
Mhm.
It sounds so simple, but it was very visual. And in that moment, when I was standing next to him, it meant everything to me. That in this very moment, as I tell you the story, I can still feel him next to me, just pointing at the luggage and say, "My child, you see, it goes in this way and then it goes out the other way, the other end."
Yeah.
But it helps me to see that's how life and death is. We see it, we don't see it, but it's not gone. It just manifests in another way on the other end.
Mhm.
And then he also said to me, "While I'm away, practice walking meditation. Practice, my child." And so I did. When I first became a nun, the whole day could pass and I didn't remember one breath. I didn't remember one step. And if I tried, just a few steps later, I would forget. So my mind would wander to the past, to the suffering, to the depressing thoughts, and I would be wallowed in that. But just time and time again, I kept trying, because when the mind can be anchored in the breath, in the steps, the mind is not free to just generate this, all these thoughts that just keep churning and sweeping us away and under. So he taught very concrete practices. And when you are in his presence, holding a cup of tea in front of him, you feel you're the only child, you're the only person that exists to him, because he's truly present. He's truly present to look at you, to listen to you, to respond to you. So in that way, his way of being comes from his practice, his continuous, constant practice. Very sincere, very genuine, and so generous is his presence and his love. So not something of a great charismatic, personality, not like that. Our teacher is very gentle and kind. And also, I remember one time a sister and I brought food to our teacher. He stayed at the Hermitage, not far from our nunnery. And as we were finishing the food, because he always insisted that we eat with him.
Oh, nice.
Always. So we knew that, so we always brought extra food. So we wouldn't eat all the food and didn't leave any for him. So as we were finishing the food, our teacher we call Thai. It literally means in Vietnamese, it means teacher. So Thai got out an apple and he was carving it and he was cutting the apple into some morsels, some pieces, and one flew to the ground. And he picked it up, he put it aside, and then he continued to cut a piece and gave it to me, and another piece and gave it to another sister. And then he carved that piece that fell on the ground. He carved around it, and then he ate it. It was just delicious to him. Yeah. And that moment when I saw that, it was such a humbling moment to me that our teacher would reserve the better part piece for us. And then an insight also came to me. he has practiced all his life to transform his suffering, to transform his habits. I'm sure, I mean, he is also a human being like all of us who has suffering and habits, but he diligently transformed them so that he can give the best of himself to his disciples, whether we are monastics or lay, you see? And so to me, that piece of apple was symbolic of his life. What he could give us, he has worked on it for himself and for us.
It sounded like every moment was a teaching moment, whether
Yes.
you're in the airport or dropping a piece of apple. It was an
Absolutely.
opportunity to know the kindness, to know the interconnectedness of life. Wow, that's a beautiful story. Hey, got a question here from Patrick, who asked me to give you a call to see if we could get you on. He spent some time out at Deer Park with you, and his question is, how does one overcome suffering to heal, and then to go on to find meaning and purpose in life? So I guess his question is, how does one overcome suffering and heal, and then go on to life?
Most of us would confidently say we do not want to suffer, we just want to be happy. But in my own experience and over the years, throughout, as being a nun and being in touch with so many people, helping so many people, I realized that we are actually very addicted to our suffering. Yes, in our way of thinking, of rehearsing the suffering, in our way of consumption, the movies we watch, the images that we consume, the music. Like when you are depressed, you like to listen to very depressing music. When you're angry, you like to listen to music that are, that is very harsh, very loud, very strong, So actually, through our consumption, through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, the touch of the body and the thoughts, we actually feed our suffering. So to say, I do not want to suffer anymore, and I will look at the way how I have fed my suffering, because nothing can survive without food. The Buddha taught that, and our teacher Tai often reminds us, nothing can survive without food. And if the depression, the suffering, has grown over the years, instead of being diminished, they have grown, then it means we have fed them by the way of consumption.
Yeah.
But thoughts also by, images, sound, smells, taste, touch, feelings, we feed them. So we have to be very determined to say, I will not feed my suffering, and identify how we feed our suffering, and slowly cut off that source of nutriment for the suffering, you see, and that will require mindfulness, awareness of what's going on inside us and around us, aware that we can be aware of what we're thinking, what we're doing, what we're saying, and how those things are feeding suffering and depression and anxiety and discrimination and alienation, and to be aware what thoughts and speech and bodily actions that do not feed that, but feed harmony, synchronicity, togetherness, gratitude, happiness. We need to be aware of them and to choose wisely. We think as Americans, we think, if you have money, you can choose anything you want, right? You go to a market, you can choose like a cereal from like 50 different brands, clothes from so many different brands, right? We think that's a choice, but that's not a choice. Everything have been researched. I mean, you either choose A or B or C or Z, but they have been laid out for you. You have no choice. You're just within that box. But to choose not to feed the suffering, that's a real choice that many of us don't make.
It seems, it sounds very difficult, but simple. You don't feed it. And awareness is the key to what I'm feeding. That's sounds like that would be amazing with healing. So in your third book, The Flowers in the Dark, I just think that's a great name. The one that came out this year that just published is called Reclaiming Your Power to Heal from Trauma to Mindfulness. Now, it sounds like you've had your share of the trauma in your life, and to blossom from the darkness. I mean, what are some of the key teachings or points or processes, from that book, Flowers in the Dark, that you'd like us to know that could help us heal some trauma? Because I think our whole country, if not planet, is so many are experiencing trauma in their life right now.
Yes, especially during the pandemic, many of us have developed or worsened our PTSD. Children, young people, adults, the elderly have suffered from a lot of trauma. A key practice in our tradition is to become aware of our breath and the body, because the mind can be abstract or elusive. But if we become aware of, for example, the breath, the Chinese character for the breath is from the mind or the mind itself. So if you think about it, it makes sense. There's such wisdom in that character, breath. When you're angry, your breathing pattern is different. When you're sad, your breathing pattern is different. When you're sick, when you're dying, your breathing pattern is different. So the breath is from the mind. The breath is the mind itself. See? So if we come back to the breath, every time here at the monastery, we share with people, every time you hear a phone ring, instead of going into a panic mode or a stress response mode, just come back to the breath and breathe in and breathe out. That's one. If you are rich, you're wealthy, you breathe in and breathe out the second time. And monks and nuns, we don't have much material things, but we breathe in and breathe out 3 times. And then during that time, we just breathe and smile and relax the body. If there's a tension somewhere in the shoulders, in the abdomen, somewhere your hands are, holding a fist, just release them. And so in that moment, with that practice, you check in with your body every moment and relax the tension. And when you relax the body, the mind relaxes, the feelings relax, the thoughts relax, and you learn to speak lovingly and gently to the body. It's okay. It's okay. Like if you are having a panic attack, if you are having like some sadness, heaviness in your chest, just put a hand where you feel the pain or the tension and just breathe into that and say, it's okay, I'm here. If you feel frightened of somebody or of some thought, you can also hold yourself and breathe and say, it's okay, I can take care of myself, I'm safe. It's just a fear, you see? So we check in with ourselves and we learn to relax the body, the thoughts and the feelings. And that's important. If we are not aware of that, then the body goes into a stress response mode. Tenses up all the time. And then it becomes a habit of breathing in a very shallow way, a habit of holding our body with so much tension that it will lead to physical illness and also mental illness. And when we are unhappy, we become unkind, not just towards ourselves, but also to those around us. We can become very indifferent towards the suffering of others. We may even say, I suffer, you should suffer too. See?
I don't know.
Yeah, like You don't know what suffering is. You should suffer some. So we become quite hateful and bitter when we are miserable, whether it's a physical pain or an emotional pain. It makes us become alienated from others and hateful and bitter. But if we know how to come back to our body and take to our body with tenderness and kindness, and to calm our thoughts and feelings so that they're not so harsh, so that there's, that source of compassion and love in our thoughts and feelings, that interconnectedness helps us to heal our body and mind, and also helps us to remember of others who are close and far, and help us to reach out and help others. And that is a source of healing and happiness too. If you see you are everything there is, it's very tiny and very miserable. But if we think that we are a part of the whole, that there's the higher power greater than us, you see, we can take refuge in that greater power, that greater community, that great source of love that's there, always there in us and all around us.
I love that visual, taking refuge in that higher place, the vibration. That's beautiful. Thank you. I've got another question for you here. This one comes from Denise, and she asks, there is more and more distrust in the world. If someone does an injustice to you, whether the cause be because of hardship or trying to beat the system, wronged by the system, they were done an injustice to, or just an unconscious gain to them, how does one work internally with that hurt and still pray for our predators or perpetrators?
If we look deeply, we will see that we are the ones who neglect ourselves the most, who take advantage, take for granted our own body and mind. We work, without proper rest, proper nutriment. We are the ones who neglect and abuse our body, who take for granted the conditions of happiness available to us. We need to remember that. And then to remember, wow, if I cannot love myself, cannot appreciate and cherish myself, cannot take care of myself, then how can I expect others to show that respect and that protection, that care towards me? And if many of us are not able to have that self-love and self-care, then of course, naturally, we will abuse each other. We'll take each other for granted. We will hurt each other. You see, when we talk about victims and perpetrators, we see them as two separate entities. But true to the insight of interbeing, in the perpetrator, there's the victim. And in the victim, there is the perpetrator. Most perpetrators of violence, of sexual abuse, they have been victimized in their childhood, in their lives. And because they didn't know how to take care and heal their trauma, whatever they rehearsed in their mind became their speech and their body reactions. And those of us who have been victimized, we perpetuate that in our daily life, the way we think about ourselves, like you're stupid, you're not worthy, you cannot do anything right. You see, speech towards ourselves can be very negative. We can be very, we doubt ourselves. And then with that kind of pain, that kind of doubt, we also distrust others. We distrust others because we don't have the trust for ourselves. Am I able to take care of myself? Am I able to be there for myself when I'm sad, when I'm angry? Am I able to hold myself in check? You see, if we have abandoned ourselves and pursued, after career ambitions or drugs or alcohol or sex, we know deep inside we're not able to care for ourselves. So how can we trust ourselves? And thus, how can we trust others? So the distrust or the mistrust should be healed by starting with ourselves. Say, I promise I will be there for myself. I will be there for this breath. One in breath and one out breath. I'm entirely there. One step I take, I'm there. And I can say, thank you. Thank you for this body. Thank you for the eyes that can still see. For the body that is still functional, although it has gone through so much trauma. You see, and moment after moment when we are able to be there for ourselves, we reestablish what in psychology we call as a secure base or healthy attachment. We should have healthy attachment to ourselves. Maybe we didn't have that with our parents or our family or partners, but we can develop a healthy relationship with ourselves where we know that we will not abandon ourselves, that we'll be there for ourselves. That is to develop trust and confidence in oneself. And trust me, when you say, yes, I promise I will be there for myself, and yes, I am being there for myself, you have less of a need for others to be there for yourself, for you. You have less of a need for others to do what you're not doing for yourself. You see, and amazingly enough, trust becomes more natural. We can also trust the others because we can trust ourselves. So I love Buddhism and our practices because it comes back to each one of us, that we have the power, that each one of us is a Buddha to be. Either you are a full-time Buddha or a part-time Buddha, you are a Buddha. And you can practice to strengthen that self-love, self-care. And in the self, there's the others. And so again, interbeing, to love oneself, naturally you will love others more deeply, more kindly.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'd like us maybe do a practice with us. A lot of questions here. I don't know, should we take one more question and then do have you take us on a meditation, or should we go straight into the meditation? What would you like? One more question or jump into Okay. So this one comes from Rosemary, and I think it was valuable and kind of weaves into part of what your last answer was. But she wants to know, from the Buddhist perspective, what about our youth and some of the difficulties with the drug addictions that are going on with our kids today? So, however you feel like addressing that particular question, she's asking about our youth and Buddhism and the addictions, which you just touched on a little bit there. But, you've got these young ones growing up. How would you share some wisdom with them that they might hear you?
The addiction to me is only a manifestation of the problem. It's not the problem in itself. What has come to be? What are the reasons that have led to the addiction? Addiction is only a coping mechanism that goes wrong. So maybe in the family, there's not enough attention, there's not enough care, the parents are not happy, and so the child lacks that source of guidance, of love, of attention, and the child may seek for some relief, and somebody may be modeling that addiction. I have met children growing up addicted to pornography because their fathers were using pornography for entertainment, for their coping mechanism, or when their parents were having problems, they use pornography or they use drugs. So young people will learn from the adults in their own home and around them how to cope with their problems. in our society nowadays. The internet is ubiquitous. And so people learn to numb their pain to avoid reality by going to a virtual world. So many people nowadays spend more time on, on screen to watch YouTube, to watch whatever they watch. That depends on their personality and their availability and their environment. But that's a way of escape. So I hear many young people saying the word escape a lot. So addiction is just another way to escape. So we can help by helping each other to come back to this reality. It's actually our planet Earth is very beautiful. There's no other place that has been found that is this beautiful. How many young people nowadays go for a walk and enjoy a sunrise or sunset, enjoy walking barefoot on the ground, on the earth, sitting under a tree? How many adults do that? If whenever time we have, we'll get out our iPhone, right? We'll get out our computer. So we are so detached from reality that we are lost in a virtual world. But the mind is constantly working. The trauma, the despair, the confusion continue to be at work undercurrent in our subconsciousness. So every time we go back to reality, it's overwhelming. So then we want to escape it again. But how can we ever escape it, right? So it's really a vicious cycle. But to come back to reality, to touch Mother Earth, to touch her beauty and grace, moment to moment, we can be nourished. We can be truly human again, and we can interact with those around us. So many young people nowadays cannot even, have a conversation with their parents. They don't even want to talk in person. They want to talk online. So in that way, it was so dependent on the virtual world. So we need to go back to a more simple way of life, more human. We are social animals. We need to have more human connection. It's nice to be on Zoom. It's convenient. It's because during this time, but we should not prefer virtual communication over real human to human interaction. You see, so those are the ways to help young people to come back and appreciate their youth, their health, their body, their all the capacities and talents should not be wasted on games, developing only a set of skills and neglecting the rest of them. Yeah, and the adults need to model that, because if adults are so consumed by the media and by all the entertainment, how can we teach the young people? How can we be good examples for them? So really, we very much affect each other, the way we live our daily life. Yes,
Beautiful.
Others.
Thank you. Connection. That's the big emphasis at Seaside right now, is connection. That's what we're discovering, is that people need the connection more than ever, because it's been lacking, generally as a whole, but in particular with the sense of having been separated. So thank you for that. So we save 10 minutes. Would you take us on a journey into meditative mindfulness practice, and take it away. And Sister Nghiem, thank you so much for your questions, answering, and the beauty in which you have brought us. And so just surrender to that wonderful vibration that you are in this moment.
Thank you for you. Thank you for all of you. Let us take a moment to sit upright. Have our shoulders open and relaxed. Just relax our arms. Relax the whole body. And smile. Breathing in Just befriend that in-breath. And as you're breathing out, befriend that out-breath. Befriending the in-breath. Befriending the out-breath. Hello in-breath. Hello out-breath. I know you're there. And I'm so happy and grateful. Yes, I can still breathe easily without an oxygen mask, without pain, without shortness of breath. I'm grateful. And as I breathe in, I'm aware of my body. I can use the ray of awareness, of mindfulness to scan from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. And as I breathe out, I relax each part of my body. Relax the forehead. Relax the face with a smile. Let the shoulders drop down a little bit. Relax the tension in the hands and the arms. Just relax each part of the body. Say hello and thanks to each part of that, of your precious body. Continue to follow your in-breath as it is and your out-breath as it is. And become aware of your body sitting on a chair, and the chair is on the earth. Hello, Mother Earth. You are truly a mother to us. Our flesh, the fluid in our body, the heat in our body, the air in our body, all come from you. You give us shelter. You give us food, our daily sustenance. You hold us. And when we go back to the earth, you also take us back. You are so beautiful. And you are so loving and unconditional. No, right in this moment, you are sick. You are so exploited and abused. You are sick. And I know you are sick. I am sick because I'm unhappy in my life. So I consume mindlessly, unmindfully, and I contribute to that exploitation, that excavation, that abuse of your body, the earth. But I also love when I can love myself and take better care of myself through mindful consumption, through simple living, through reaching out to help others. I can help you see you. I can help you to replenish yourself and restore yourself so that our children and grandchildren and all the generations also have a chance to live on this beautiful planet. My heart is open and send well wishes to those who are far away, who are near, right in my hometown, who suffer hunger, who suffer isolation and sickness, who have to leave their countries find protection and safety. I open my eyes to those, knowing that they are also a part of me and part of them. And smile. There's so much love to share. We have abundance to share when our hearts are open. Just be happy wherever we are. We don't need to grasp, to consume, to snatch from anybody. We have so much to enjoy, to share. Thank you, my dear ones. May you be safe. May you take care of your happiness in your steps, in your breathing, in your positive, loving thoughts, speech, and bodily actions. Know that you matter, that your happiness matters to many. Everything you do, however small it is, it matters. When you brush your teeth, if you use a cup, you can save some water. When you walk out of the room, you can turn off the light. And that matters. When you do something to help somebody, to help preserve this planet, do it out of love. Whenever we do something out of love, it's long lasting. And it won't wear us out, cause us to get burned out. Bless you.
Blessings. Thank you.
Wow. That's beautiful. Thank you. Ah, it was a joy, Sister Nghiem. It's what a gift we have here in you, and just bless the monastery that you're in, and just feel richer for the peace and the love, the awareness that you brought us, and just trust that your physical being is comfortable and whole and ready to get back into action. So got so many more questions. Want to ask you about mindfulness more, and the Eightfold Path and the Middle Way. And I'm just going to have to come out and visit you sometime. So look forward to doing that for sure.
And know the wisdom is inside. You
Yes.
practice, you will find the answers also. But do come to practice with us. We are here for you.
I will for sure. So all our listeners tonight, I want to let you know that next week we have a wonderful gentleman by the name of Isa Grimes, Hindu, and he was born over in India. His father was one of the first devotees with Sai Baba, and so he grew up for the first several years of his life, 14 years or so, around that ashram, and yet he's very American. He's got his PhD in philosophy and one in Hindu, and he teaches at University of San Diego, and so he'll be with us next week, 7 o'clock. Be part of it. And Sister D, we love you. Thank you so much. Blessings be upon you always.
Take good care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, all dear friends.